Chapter 5. The motel was quiet, save for the hum of the neon vacancy sign flickering outside the window. Thomas sat on the edge of the bed, the scent of stale cigarettes and cleaning solution thick in the air. Red had fallen asleep almost immediately, exhaustion from the long drive overtaking her. Anna curled up beside her mother, a small hand tangled in Red's hair, breathing steady and deep. But Thomas couldn't sleep. Not here, not now. His mind drifted back to the house, the voices echoing off those old walls, the hollow feeling in his chest when he stepped inside. Granny wasn't there, not really. The body may have been in a casket somewhere, but the spirit, the fire that made that house a home, was gone. And the way his family had turned into scavengers, tearing through drawers and closets, picking apart a life that wasn't even cold yet, it made his stomach turn. The house had never seemed so small, so suffocating. The faded wallpaper peeling in the corners still smelled of Granny's homemade soap. The wooden floors creaked beneath the weight of too many feet, unfamiliar hands rifling through her things. The old wood-burning stove in the kitchen, the same one she had used to cook cornbread and beans for a house full of hungry mouths, now sat cold and lifeless. The rocker in the corner, where she once sat and hummed old hymns, was still. Without her, it was just a house, a dead house, filled with dead things. And yet, they still wanted it, wanted all of it. They whispered about a will, about Granny's wishes, but no one seemed to know where it was. Maybe she never made one. Maybe she never had to. She had always said folks ought to know right from wrong without needing it written down, but greed had a way of making even kin forget their manners. Thomas saw the hungry eyes, the fingers lingering too long over old silverware, the murmurs over who would get what. None of them were talking about her, about the woman who had made sure they never went hungry, who had stitched their clothes when times were lean, who had carried the weight of their family on her back. No, they were too busy picking at her bones. Thomas ran a hand through his hair, exhaling through his nose. He needed air. Stepping outside, the night greeted him with a heavy silence. The mountains stretched dark and endless beyond the edge of town, the same mountains that had raised him, watched him, held secrets he'd tried to forget. A cigarette dangled from his lips as he lit it with shaking fingers, inhaling deep, letting the smoke settle in his lungs before exhaling in a slow stream. The road back to Granny's house was just a few miles from here. He could see it in his mind, the winding path cutting through thick woods, the place where the trees stood just a little too close, where the light never quite reached the ground. A whisper of wind rustled the motel's plastic curtains behind him, but Thomas felt something else. A presence. A memory crawling up his spine like icy fingers. He knew that road. He knew what lurked in the shadow of those trees. And for the first time since he was a boy, he felt it again. Something was watching him. He turned his head sharply, eyes scanning the darkened parking lot. Empty. Just the dim glow of a street lamp and the distant hum of a late-night truck passing on the highway. But the feeling didn't leave. It clung to him like the damp air, heavy, unshakable. Thomas took another long drag, willing his nerves to settle. Maybe it was just exhaustion. Maybe grief was making him paranoid. But deep down, in the place where nightmares were born, he knew better. Sitting in the car, he gripped the steering wheel with white-knuckled hands, his reflection staring back at him in the windshield. That house wasn't home anymore. It had been alive because she was alive. Now it was just an empty shell, filled with ghosts and grasping hands. And the grief, the kind that nibbled at the edges of his mind all day, finally exploded out in hot, heaving sobs. Alone in the parking lot, under the indifferent glow of a buzzing street lamp, Thomas fell apart. He let the tears come, let them wring him dry, knowing that inside, Red and Anna were warm and safe. But he wasn't. He wasn't ready. And deep down, in the marrow of his bones, he knew the mountain never let go of its own.